Welcome to True Echo, where real moments meet bold voices. In today's story, we dive into a powerful modern-day David versus Goliath tale set in suburban Georgia. One man's quiet life is disrupted when a self-righteous HOA board member starts treating his private driveway like public property. But when warnings turn to war and cameras start rolling, what follows is a clash of pride, power, and principle that no one saw coming. Stay with us. Victor Malone didn't buy a house to start a war. The morning sun had barely warmed the rooftops of his quiet Macon neighborhood when he stepped onto his porch with a hot mug of coffee in hand. It was supposed to be a simple Saturday: patch the fence, maybe trim the hedges, and finally swap out the garage light that flickered like a horror movie prop. The corner lot he bought was everything he wanted: peaceful, modest, and his. But then he saw it. The beige SUV. Parked bold and blatant right in his driveway. Not across it. Not beside it. In it. The tires practically nudged the edge of his garage door. No note. No person in sight. Just sitting there like it belonged, or worse, like he didn't. Victor froze, coffee halfway to his lips. At first, he thought it had to be some mistake. Maybe a delivery person had gotten turned around or someone needed a quick stop. But 20 minutes passed. Then 30. He walked up, checked the plates, and there it was, that same smug SUV from the HOA meetings. Beige, bumper stickered with sanctimonious slogans: "Great neighbors build great neighborhoods." Yeah. He'd seen it before. And he'd seen her, too. Short. Cropped hair. Mid to late 50s. Always walking like she was late to a board meeting that no one invited her to. Clipboard like a shield. Authority without permission. Victor sighed. He didn't want drama. Especially not in a neighborhood where he was still the new guy after 2 months. So when he spotted her power walking the next morning, earbuds in, that blue track jacket reflecting the morning light like a warning signal, he stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called. She paused, removed an earbud, gave a tight smile. "Yes." He motioned toward the driveway. "That your SUV?" She barely blinked. "Oh, yes. I left it there for a bit. I usually walk from the end of the block, but it was full." "No biggie." Victor chose his words carefully. "It's just, that's my driveway." "Oh, I know," she said with a chuckle. "I figured it wouldn't be a problem. Just 20 minutes or so." He gave a polite, tight chuckle. "Right. It's just. I do use it. I mean, it's part of my house." She gave a shrug. "I'm on the HOA board. We try to keep things flexible." Flexible. As if her clipboard gave her dominion over concrete. "Still," Victor nodded. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't park there again." She gave another tight smile. "Sure. No problem." For a few days, she kept her word. Until she didn't. Victor had hoped that would be the end of it. A misunderstanding corrected. A simple conversation, handled like adults. But Thursday morning, when he stepped out with his gym bag in one hand and keys in the other, there it was again, that same beige SUV, parked like it had a lease on his property. Same angle. Same smug defiance. No note. No apology. This time, Victor didn't go looking for her. He didn't call her out or wait around. Instead, he took out his phone, snapped a picture, and sent it to himself. Evidence. Just in case. As he backed out of the garage, he maneuvered carefully, barely missing her bumper by 4 inches. That night, she was at the HOA meeting again, wearing the same tight smile, standing at the front of the room talking about community spirit and property standards. She didn't glance in his direction once. But when Victor got home, there was a flyer taped to his door: lawn maintenance guidelines. Bolded. Underlined. Laughable. His grass wasn't overgrown. His hedges weren't wild. The edges were maybe half an inch uneven. Definitely not worthy of a violation in a neighborhood where half the porches had peeling paint and moldy gutters. This wasn't about standards. This was about power. Or at least her illusion of it. So, Victor decided to prepare. That Saturday, he parked his own car flush against the garage the night before and left the rest of the driveway wide open. Not because he needed to, but because he knew she couldn't resist the opportunity. Sure enough, at 7:13 a.m., the SUV rolled in like it owned the place. No hesitation. No second guessing. She clicked on her hazards, stepped out with her clipboard and earbuds, and marched off like she was there to perform an audit of the American dream. Victor waited until she rounded the corner, then stepped outside. He didn't move the car. He didn't even knock on her door. He just stood there beside it with his arms folded. 30 minutes later, she returned, sweat on her brow, and saw him standing by the hood. She tugged one earbud out, breath slightly labored. "Something wrong?" she asked, like she hadn't done it again. Victor stared. "We talked about this last week." She wiped her forehead with the sleeve of her jacket. "I know, but the street's full again. And I had HOA rounds to finish. You realize this is private property, right?" "Are you being serious?" she asked, the words drenched in disbelief. "It's just a driveway." He paused. "Would you park in someone else's driveway?" Silence. "I can't keep working around someone else's car." "It's disrespectful," Victor continued, tone calm but solid. She let out a frustrated sigh, as though she were the one being wronged. "I've lived here 15 years. Never had a neighbor treat me like this." "You mean, ask you not to park in their driveway?" No response. Just a huff as she got in her car and reversed, tires squealing slightly. Halfway down the street, she rolled down her window. "Maybe you should come to more HOA meetings. Might help you settle in better." Victor didn't reply. He didn't flinch. He simply turned around and walked inside. Later that afternoon, over a call with his cousin Darnell, he relayed the incident. "You sure you didn't move into one of those Stepford communities?" Darnell laughed. Victor chuckled, but the exhaustion in his voice was obvious. "Didn't think I'd have to defend my own driveway, man. I just want to watch ESPN and mow my lawn in peace." "Get a sign," Darnell said. "Something legal. Tow-away zone. Private driveway. Post it right where she parks. Make it official." Victor thought about it. He wasn't looking for a war, but maybe it was time to set boundaries in a language she understood. But he never got the chance to order the sign before Monday came. That morning, rushing to leave for work, Victor opened his door and froze. The SUV was back. Not just back, worse. It was crooked. Sloppy. The rear bumper halfway over the sidewalk. A rolled-up newspaper rested on the windshield like it had been there for hours. Victor didn't even look around this time. No note. No Carolyn in sight. He pulled out his phone, snapped 3 photos, then opened the HOA contact list he'd been given in his welcome packet. He found the general email, attached the photos, and hit send. Then he installed a Ring camera facing his driveway. That night, there was no reply from the HOA, but at 7:30 p.m., there was a knock on his door. Carolyn stood there, that same expressionless face holding a single sheet of paper. "I got your email," she said. "You didn't have to go that route. You could have spoken to me." Victor stepped out onto the porch, voice calm. "I did." She held the paper between 2 fingers like it was offensive. "This feels aggressive. So does blocking my driveway 3 times in 1 week." They stood in silence for a beat. "I'll make sure not to park there again," she said finally. "I hope we can move past this." Victor gave a single nod. "That's all I ever wanted." She turned and walked off. But deep down, he knew, with people like her, things don't end with an apology. Not really. For a full week, everything was quiet. No beige SUV. No flyers. No passive-aggressive visits. Victor started to believe, maybe, just maybe, Carolyn had finally gotten the message. He spent his evenings mowing the lawn, catching the Hawks game, and letting himself relax just a bit. His mornings were peaceful again, coffee on the porch, the sun climbing steadily, no unexpected guests in his driveway. But peace in these kinds of battles is often just the eye of the storm. It began with something small. A neon orange card wedged in the edge of his mailbox, fluttering in the breeze. Yard appearance infraction notice. Victor stared at it for a moment, confusion creeping in. Uneven edging. He looked at his walkway. Tidy. Trimmed. Nothing unusual. He glanced at his neighbors' lawns, several were overgrown, a few full of dandelions, and one had Christmas lights still dangling from the gutter. But none of them had cards. Victor sighed, walked inside, and pinned the card to the fridge like a ridiculous trophy. He wasn't even mad, just tired. He grabbed some garden shears and, more for the principle than the appearance, cleaned the edges with extra precision. But it didn't stop there. Trash bins mysteriously ended up in the street, not just once, but 3 times in a row. A chalk message appeared on his driveway one afternoon, needs power washing, with a crooked arrow pointing to his house. Then came the most disrespectful message of all, unbagged dog poop, placed right on the corner of his walkway. Twice. Victor never saw who did it. But he didn't need to. Carolyn wasn't yelling. She wasn't screaming. But she was playing dirty. Slowly. Steadily. Dripping small doses of frustration into his day like poison in a teacup. Victor started a notebook. He logged each offense, every date, every photo. Not just to vent, but to document. Because people like Carolyn didn't attack directly. They wore you down until you either snapped or left. And Victor wasn't leaving. The final straw came during a Zoom call with his tech team at work. Mid-meeting, his Ring app pinged. Someone was at the door. He muted his mic and checked the feed. Carolyn. Standing on his porch. Clipboard in one hand, arms crossed. She wasn't holding a package. Wasn't knocking like a neighbor. She was waiting. Victor pressed the intercom. Can I help you? She smiled sweetly. Hey there. Just a heads up, your recycling bin was still out after 10 a.m. That's against the HOA policy. Page 11, subsection 2. He blinked. You rang my doorbell, for that? I figured a friendly reminder was better than a notice, she said with a cheery lilt. He paused, then replied flatly. Got it. I'll make sure to set an alarm. Just trying to keep the neighborhood looking nice, she chirped. Then turned and strutted off, smug as a mall cop catching a jaywalker. Victor didn't move. He sat there, headset in his lap, staring at the Ring feed as it caught her smirk before she disappeared around the corner. Later that night, he called Darnell. This ain't about driveways anymore, Victor said. She's trying to wear me down. Darnell didn't hesitate. You already know what this is. She doesn't see you as a neighbor. She sees you as a problem that showed up where she thinks she runs things. Victor didn't answer. She's not testing the rules. She's testing your patience, Darnell continued. So what's your move? Victor exhaled, eyes on the notebook sitting on his desk, now thick with folded flyers, time-stamped photos, and scribbled observations. I think it's time to stop reacting, he said. Time to take control. That night, he ordered 2 custom signs online. Private property, driveway parking by permit only. Violators will be towed. This is not a public parking space. He posted one beside his garage and the other at the edge of the driveway, right by the sidewalk, clear, bold, unmistakable. 2 days later, someone peeled one of the signs halfway off the post. Victor didn't get angry. He laughed. Because it wasn't subtle anymore, it was desperation. So he made a call to the local towing company. "What do I need," he asked, "to enforce a tow on a vehicle blocking my private driveway?" Thursday morning arrived quiet and cool. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but Victor was up early, sipping his usual coffee, watching the birds perch on the oak tree out front. Then he saw it. The beige SUV. Back again. Except this time, it was worse than ever. Nose practically kissing the garage. Parked so deep it blocked his walkway and the passenger side of his own car. Crooked, disrespectful, and bold. Victor stood motionless, then calmly placed his coffee on the table, grabbed his phone, and walked outside. He took pictures from every angle, license plate, distance from the curb, even the shadow it cast over the sidewalk. She had parked just 30 minutes ago. Ring footage showed her swinging into the driveway with all the arrogance of a queen arriving at her castle. Victor didn't wait. He dialed the tow company. "She's back," he said. "Same car. Same issue. I've got posted signs, footage, and photos. Please send a truck." 22 minutes later, the tow truck pulled up. Just as they were lowering the hook, Carolyn came jogging down the sidewalk in her bright blue jacket, waving her arms. "Wait. Wait," she called, earbuds swinging wildly. "I'm right here. You can't tow me, I was just finishing my walk." The driver didn't look at her. He looked at Victor, who calmly handed over his ID and the footage on his phone. Carolyn's voice cracked. "Victor. Seriously? This is insane. You're having me towed. Over a driveway?" Victor's voice was steady. "Over my driveway. You're being ridiculous." "I asked. You ignored. Now we're done asking." She huffed, stormed in a circle, pulled out her phone, and began recording. "I'm going to the board. You'll regret this." Victor didn't flinch. "You already said that last time." The SUV rose slowly as the truck lifted it. Carolyn stood frozen, hand over her mouth, watching it disappear around the corner like it was the end of an era. Victor didn't celebrate. Didn't speak. He just watched in silence, not victorious, just resolved. But the neighborhood had been watching. And within hours, that silence would turn into something far louder than either of them expected. By mid-afternoon, Victor's front yard became the most watched place in the subdivision, and not because of his lawn edges. Across the street, Deshaun, the retired Army vet who rarely spoke unless he was walking his dog or fixing his vintage Ford truck, had captured the entire towing ordeal on his doorbell camera. And someone else, Victor didn't even know who, uploaded a snippet of that footage to the neighborhood group chat. No commentary. No filters. Just raw video, Carolyn running in slippers, screaming at a tow truck driver, and Victor standing calmly like a man who just had enough. Within hours, the video started bouncing around Facebook, then slipped onto a local, Suburban drama, Instagram page with the caption, "When HOA power trips go wrong." Victor didn't post it. He didn't even comment. But others did. "You can't even feel bad." Man warned her twice. She really thought HOA status was a parking pass. Bro's got the patience of a saint. Respect. Deshaun knocked on Victor's door that evening, grinning like a kid holding a prank confession. "Yo, you seen this thing go viral yet?" Victor raised an eyebrow. "What thing?" Deshaun pulled out his phone, opened Instagram, and tapped a clip titled, "Slipper Karen Gets Schooled." It had 10,000 views, then 12,000, then 15,000 before Victor could finish watching the 30-second clip. Carolyn's flailing arms. Victor sipping his coffee. Deshawn's off-screen voice chiming in with a now legendary line. "You want me to email you this footage too?" Victor chuckled once, but the smile faded as he read the comments. Most people were on his side. But there were a few. Petty. Overreacting. Is this really about a driveway? That's when it hit him, the next battle wasn't the SUV. It was the narrative. And the neighborhood was starting to split. The next morning, Victor noticed a difference. Mrs. Samuels, who always waved when she walked her schnauzer, didn't so much as glance at him. Mr. Dwyer, who once offered him leftover lumber for a shed project, suddenly pulled his trash bins in like Victor was contagious. Deshawn stayed cool. "Let them pick sides," he said, sipping from a flask-sized thermos on Victor's porch. "Some of these folks don't even know what boundaries mean until someone draws a line." The following HOA meeting was standing room only. People who hadn't shown up in months came out, armed with coffee, curiosity, and thinly veiled judgment. Victor debated skipping it, but something told him he needed to sit in that room and be seen. Heard. Counted. 30 minutes in, Carolyn finally stood up. "I think we need to address the unnecessary attention our community has received," she said, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "The videos online, the viral footage, it doesn't reflect who we are." Several people nodded, including the woman who once lent Victor hedge trimmers and now avoided eye contact. Carolyn continued. "There was a dispute between neighbors, yes, but when private moments are broadcast publicly, it damages our reputation. I hope we can all agree, this is not how we build community." Victor raised his hand. Silence fell. "I didn't post anything," he said calmly. "That was someone else's footage. And it was taken from public property." He paused. "She parked on private property. Mine. After I asked her not to, multiple times. I followed every HOA rule. Filed reports. Submitted photos. Got silence." He let that land. Howard Green, one of the older board members with a permanent look of boredom, cleared his throat. "If signage was up and the car was uninvited, then towing is within rights. That's pretty clear." Carolyn's eyes narrowed. Still, the tone. Victor didn't let her finish. The tone changed when no one listened. When quiet didn't work. A younger woman near the back, who had moved in last month, raised her hand. "Honestly, it's wild he even had to go that far. It's not like he just snapped. There was a pattern." The meeting moved on awkwardly. No resolution, no apologies. But Victor noticed something important: nobody challenged the facts. And facts were all he needed. That night, he took down the viral video from his saved bookmarks. Closed the neighborhood app. Unsubscribed from the community email list. He didn't need digital validation. He needed his space. But peace didn't return immediately. Because the next Tuesday morning, as if summoned by pride or spite, the beige SUV reappeared. Parked even deeper in the driveway this time. Angled in a way that dared confrontation. Victor didn't react. Not with anger. Not with words. He simply picked up the phone, dialed the same towing company, and said 3 words. "She's back." Victor didn't bother standing at the window this time. He didn't pace. He didn't brew another cup of coffee. He just waited in silence as the tow truck pulled into the cul-de-sac, low and slow like a predator that knew its prey would never learn. 15 minutes later, the driver stepped out, same guy from before, wearing mirrored sunglasses and a slight smirk like he already knew what was coming. Victor stepped outside, calm and collected. "Same car, same story," he said, handing over his documents. The tow truck driver nodded. "We remember." Whole department saw the last clip. As the driver backed the truck into position, Carolyn's beige SUV was already halfway lifted before the neighborhood's most infamous figure made her entrance. This time, Carolyn didn't walk. She sprinted. Hair in rollers. House slippers flapping. Bathrobe billowing like a flag of delusional authority. She charged down the street like she was trying to stop a bank robbery. "Wait, wait, wait," she yelled, breathless. "You can't do this again." Victor didn't flinch. He simply turned to her, hands in his pockets. Carolyn stumbled to a halt, gasping, red-faced. "I was only parked there for 20 minutes. Victor looked at the driver, who shrugged and continued working. "This is harassment," she barked. "Pure and simple." "No," Victor said coolly. "It's consequence." Carolyn stomped forward and stood in front of the tow truck like she could block its path with indignation alone. "I live here. I'm not just some stranger." Victor raised an eyebrow. "But you parked like one." "You're making this personal," she shouted, waving her arms toward the growing number of neighbors now peeking out of their windows, their phones suspiciously tilted forward. Victor didn't raise his voice. "No. I'm enforcing boundaries. You're just not used to hearing the word no." That's when Deshawn stepped out onto his porch, phone already recording. "You want me to email you this footage too?" he called out, grinning. Carolyn's face turned a deeper shade of red than her robe. "Turn that off," she screeched. "This is a private matter." Deshawn just shook his head. "Not on someone else's property, it ain't." The tow truck lifted her SUV completely. The whine of the hydraulics was like a courtroom gavel. The driver gave a nod to Victor, then slowly pulled away with Carolyn's beige ship of entitlement in tow. She stared after it, chest heaving, helpless. "You'll regret this," she growled, turning back to Victor. "I'm filing a harassment complaint. I'll go to the board. I'll talk to the president." Victor didn't blink. "You already did. Twice." And with that, he turned and walked inside, door closing gently behind him. But the neighborhood? Oh, the neighborhood was louder than ever. That night, Deshawn came by again, not with a drink, but with an update. "You are officially internet royalty," he said, waving his phone. "My niece posted the second tow with edits. Dramatic music. Zoom-ins. Meme text overlays. Bro, you sipping your coffee has become a gif." Victor winced. "I didn't ask for that." "Nope," Deshawn grinned. "But you earned it." He played the video. Sure enough, Carolyn's robe flapping in slow motion, Victor calmly sipping his drink, dramatic music swelling in the background like a trailer for a suburban civil war. Comments were flying. "Protect this man at all costs. HOA privilege meets the real world. This is black homeowner excellence." Victor appreciated the support, but the truth was, he hadn't wanted to go viral. He hadn't moved here for drama, attention, or Facebook fame. He just wanted peace. But peace was harder to come by now. Because even though the clip had been uploaded by someone else, Carolyn had her version of the story. And not everyone was laughing. The following week, Victor noticed the tide shifting again. It started with sideways glances. Then came the cold shoulders. Mrs. Hawthorne, the woman who'd once given him a slice of lemon cake during a block party, now crossed the street with her dog instead of walking past his house. A few people still nodded or offered quiet thumbs up, but many acted like he was the problem now. The HOA portal remained silent. No acknowledgement of his complaints. No formal response to the footage, the reports, or the emails. Victor realized something important: there was no winning in a neighborhood where respect had to be earned by letting things slide. But he wasn't about to slide back. That's when he printed everything. All his photos. The signs. Screenshots of the footage. HOA guidelines. Tow receipts. Every documented infraction, not just hers, but hers alone, and mailed them, certified, to the HOA board, their legal liaison, and the city zoning department. No more silence. No more games. He didn't need them to like him. He just needed them to listen. The certified letters did what emails never could, make people nervous. Within 3 days of their delivery, Victor received a formal response from the HOA board secretary. The tone was corporate polite, the kind used when someone's clearly uncomfortable but trying to sound in control. Mr. Malone, thank you for your detailed documentation. The board has reviewed your correspondence and will be conducting an internal assessment of the reported incidents. We appreciate your commitment to maintaining the integrity of our community. Translation: we didn't want to deal with this, but now we have to. Victor didn't need fireworks. He didn't even need a public apology. He just needed a paper trail. Because when people like Carolyn push boundaries, they count on silence. On people wanting to keep the peace. But peace without respect is just submission dressed in diplomacy. And Victor had submitted enough in his life. Saturday came around quietly. No beige SUV. No flyers. No poop on the lawn. Just birdsong, the gentle hum of a neighbor's mower 2 blocks over, and a rare sense of calm. Victor stood on his porch sipping coffee, staring at the quiet space in his driveway like it was finally his again. Then he saw it, not Carolyn, but something else. A black SUV slowly rolled down the street, then parked across from his house. A man in a blazer stepped out, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched low on his nose. He walked with purpose, not the phony urgency of Carolyn's HOA strut, but the kind of walk people use when they have actual authority. Victor met him at the walkway. Mr. Malone, the man asked. Yes. I'm with the city's neighborhood affairs office. We received a request for community mediation regarding ongoing disputes involving property access and HOA protocol. Victor raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. The man continued, your documentation was thorough. We'd like to do a formal review with both parties present. Set expectations. Draw hard lines. Victor nodded. I've already drawn mine. I know, the man said, flipping a page on his clipboard. And that's why we're here. 2 days later, they held the mediation session at the community center. Neutral ground. Long folding tables. 2 pitchers of water. And a third party to ensure things didn't explode. Carolyn arrived looking pristine, business suit, pressed hair, clipboard in hand. But her energy was different. Less smug. More measured. She avoided Victor's eyes as she sat across from him. The city rep opened the meeting by reviewing the rules. Driveways are private property. Use without consent is considered trespass. He then reviewed the documented incidents. Dates. Photos. Tow orders. Signage. Carolyn's fingers tapped her clipboard like a Morse code of denial, but she didn't interrupt. When asked if she disputed the facts, she said only, I didn't think it would become this serious. Victor tilted his head. But it did. Because you didn't stop. I've lived here for 15 years, she said, with a shrug. I care about this place. So do I, Victor replied. That's why I drew the line. Silence. For once, it landed. The mediator nodded. Going forward, you're both expected to respect physical boundaries and limit direct contact. Any further issues can be escalated to the city or your legal representatives. Meeting adjourned. Carolyn stood, smoothed her skirt, and gave Victor one last look, not angry. Not even embarrassed. Just, surprised. Like she never thought she'd actually be held accountable. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Quietly. Carolyn didn't park in Victor's driveway again. No more notes. No more knocks. And most surprisingly, no more side glances from the neighborhood. People returned to waving, nodding, even stopping for brief conversations at the mailbox. It wasn't a victory parade, but it was something better, normal. Deshaun stopped by one afternoon with his dog, Duke, in tow. "You know," he said, chuckling, "I think you might be the first person in HOA history to win a fight without raising your voice." Victor smiled. "I didn't win." Deshaun raised an eyebrow. "You didn't?" "I just stopped losing." But that piece was tested one last time. One quiet morning a month later, Victor found a small envelope in his mailbox. No name. No stamp. Just a folded piece of printer paper inside. Typed. No signature. Some of us still believe in community over conflict. Next time, maybe handle things with grace instead of drama. Victor stared at the note, then laughed. Not out of anger, out of relief. Because that note wasn't a threat. It was proof. Proof that he'd drawn the line so clearly, people finally had to walk around it. He walked inside, grabbed a pen, and wrote 3 words at the top of his notebook, right above the last logged incident. Never again, quietly. Summer turned into fall, and with the crisp morning air came a sense of stillness Victor hadn't felt since he moved into the neighborhood. No cars blocking his driveway. No flyers. No surprise visits from self-appointed HOA tyrants in bathrobes. But Victor hadn't forgotten. He still kept the notebook. Still had the ring cam footage backed up in the cloud. Still had his signs posted, clean and clear, though now, no one dared touch them. The silence wasn't just compliance. It was respect, earned the hard way. He'd walked into this neighborhood a stranger, hopeful and quiet. But he stayed by standing firm. One afternoon, as the leaves began turning amber and rust red, Victor was outside trimming the hedges when a soft voice called from across the lawn. "Victor?" He turned. It was Beatrice, the rosebush lady who used to wave every Sunday before everything went cold. She looked awkward, hesitant, like someone approaching a dog that might bite. "Hi," she said, walking up with a small smile and a tray in her hands. "I made pecan pie. Thought you might want a slice." Victor raised an eyebrow, amused but not unkind. "That's a peace offering if I've ever seen one." She gave a small laugh. "Well, it's deserved." He took the tray. "Thanks." They stood there for a moment, silence hanging between them, not uncomfortable but real. "I didn't know the whole story," she finally said. "None of us really did. We just assumed." Victor didn't respond immediately. He didn't have to. After a beat, Beatrice added, "You were right. She crossed the line. And you didn't yell. You didn't threaten. You just stood your ground." Victor nodded once, then said, "That's all I ever wanted. My ground." She offered a soft, sincere smile. "Well, you've got it." That evening, Victor sat on his porch with a fork and a paper plate of the warm pecan pie. He watched kids ride bikes, a couple walk their dog, and for the first time since moving in, it felt like his neighborhood, too, not just a place he paid a mortgage on. He remembered something his father once told him when they'd driven past a fancy gated community years ago. "The price of a house don't buy you peace. You gotta build that yourself." Now, Victor finally understood. He hadn't gone viral to get even. He hadn't towed Carolyn's SUV for revenge. He did it because respect isn't something you beg for, it's something you defend. And when someone like Carolyn treats your home like it's a convenience, and your boundaries like suggestions, you have 2 choices. Let it slide. Or draw the line. Victor chose the line. And when Carolyn tested it, not once but twice, he didn't raise his voice. He just called the truck. That quiet defiance, that firm insistence on being treated like everyone else, had done something louder than any confrontation ever could. It told the neighborhood, "I'm not temporary. I'm not invisible. I'm here, and I'm staying." Sometimes, standing up for yourself isn't about shouting. It's about not moving when someone tries to push you out of place. Victor Malone didn't ask for a war, but when one came to his driveway, he chose dignity over drama, boundaries over backlash. And in doing so, he reminded us all of something powerful. You don't have to raise your voice to protect your space, you just have to hold your ground. If you've ever had a neighbor cross the line, or you've been treated like you didn't belong in a place you worked hard to call home, we want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it, because you're not alone. And if this story moved you, subscribe to True Echo for more real, raw, and revealing stories. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder: silence is not the same as surrender.